The fire took everything. My apartment, my sketches, the worn-out guitar I'd played since I was 16. All gone in a single night, reduced to ash and memory. But as I stood outside the smoldering ruins, shivering in the cold Syracuse dawn, it wasn't the loss of things that broke me. It was the fear that I'd lost him. My name is Marcus Tate, 28, a graphic designer scraping by in a city that felt too small for my dreams but too big for my wallet. I'd always been the kind of guy who kept his head down, worked hard, and loved quietly. That night, as the fire alarm screamed and smoke choked the air, I didn't think about my portfolio or the vintage records I'd spent years collecting. I thought about Javi, my boyfriend of 2 years, who was supposed to be at my place but wasn't answering his phone. The firefighters wouldn't let me back in. "Too dangerous," one of them said, his voice muffled behind a mask. I stood there, barefoot in pajama pants and a borrowed jacket, dialing Javi's number over and over, each unanswered ring tightening the knot in my chest. He'd been at a late shift at the community center, hadn't he? Or was he already in my bed when the fire started? The not knowing was worse than the flames. I met Javier Morales, 27, at a poetry slam in a dimly lit cafe downtown. He was all fire, sharp words, sharper eyes, a Puerto Rican poet with a laugh that could pull you out of your darkest day. I was the quiet one, sketching in the corner, but he saw me, really saw me. "You're hiding a whole world in those drawings," he'd said, leaning over my sketchbook with a grin that made my heart stutter. That was the start of us. Two guys from different worlds, finding each other in a city that didn't always feel like home. That morning, as the sun rose over the wreckage of my life, I spotted him. Javi was sprinting down the street, his work boots pounding the pavement, his face a mask of panic. "Marcus!" he shouted, shoving past a cop to reach me. He grabbed my shoulders, his hands trembling as he checked me for burns, for bruises, for proof I was still here. "I thought, I got your voicemail, and His voice cracked, and he pulled me into a hug so tight I could feel his heartbeat. "I'm okay," I whispered, but I wasn't. Not really. The fire hadn't just taken my stuff. It had stripped me bare, exposed every crack in the life I'd built. I had no home, no savings, no plan. But Javi was here, solid and real, and for the first time since the alarms woke me, I could breathe. We sat on the curb watching the firefighters pack up. Javi's arms stayed around me, his warmth cutting through the October chill. "You're staying with me," he said, not asking. His apartment was a tiny studio in Armory Square, barely big enough for one, but he didn't hesitate. "We'll figure it out, Marcus. Together." I nodded, too tired to argue, too grateful to cry. But deep down, I wondered if together could survive this. I'd always prided myself on standing on my own 2 feet, but now I had nothing, no job prospects, no place to call mine. How could I be the partner Javi deserved when I was starting from zero? The next few days were a blur. Javi's place was a lifeline, but it wasn't home. His bed was a mattress on the floor, his kitchen a hot plate and a sink that leaked. Still, he made space for me. Cleared a drawer, hung my one salvaged sketchbook on the wall like it was art. He cooked arroz con gandals, his mom's recipe, and we ate cross-legged on the floor, laughing about the time he tried to teach me salsa and I tripped over my own feet. But the laughter didn't reach my eyes. I was drowning in guilt, in the weight of being a burden. One night, I caught him staring at his phone, his jaw tight. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then showed me the screen. A text from his sister, Elena, back in San Juan. "Mommy's sick again. You need to send money. Javi worked 2 jobs, community center by day, bartender by night, but it was never enough. And now, with me crashing at his place, eating his food, I was another weight on his shoulders. I'll get a job, I said, too quickly. I'll pay you back, Javi, for everything. He shook his head, his dark eyes fierce. This isn't about money, Marcus. You're not a guest here. You're my life. His words hit like a punch, raw and unfiltered, but they didn't erase the shame curling in my gut. The truth was, I didn't know how to be his life when I didn't even know how to rebuild my own. I started applying for jobs. Anything, anywhere. Coffee shops, retail, even a warehouse gig that paid barely above minimum wage. But Syracuse wasn't exactly a hub for graphic designers, and every rejection email felt like another brick in a wall closing me in. Javi kept me grounded, but I could see the strain in his smile, the way he stayed up late balancing bills, the way he hid his worry behind jokes. One afternoon, I found a flyer tucked under his door. It was for a local art contest, hosted by a gallery in the Westcott neighborhood. First prize, $5,000 and a solo exhibition. My heart raced. This could be my chance, not just to get back on my feet, but to prove to Javi I wasn't just taking from him. I had one sketchbook left, a few pencils, and a stubborn spark of hope. But the deadline was in 2 weeks, and the theme, resilience, felt like a cruel joke. How could I create something about strength when I felt so broken? That night, Javi came home late, smelling of whiskey and bar smoke. He collapsed onto the mattress beside me, his hand finding mine in the dark. "You okay?" he murmured, half asleep. I wasn't, but his fingers laced through mine, steady and warm, reminded me why I had to try. The gallery contest consumed me. Every spare moment, I hunched over Javi's wobbly kitchen table, sketching until my fingers cramped. The theme, resilience, haunted me. Each stroke of my pencil felt like a confession of how little I believed in it. But Javi's faith in me was unshakable. He'd come home from his shifts, exhausted, and still find the energy to lean over my shoulder, whispering, "That's gonna blow them away, mi amor." His belief was a lifeline, but it also terrified me. What if I failed him again? I started sketching us, 2 figures standing together against a city skyline, fractured but whole. It was raw, imperfect, like us. I poured everything into it. The fire, the fear, the way Javi's hand in mine felt like the only thing keeping me from falling apart. But the more I drew, the more I saw the cracks in our life together. Javi was stretching himself thin, working extra hours to cover his mom's medical bills and our rent. I overheard him on the phone with Elena one night, his voice low and strained. "I'm trying, okay? I'll send what I can." Guilt gnawed at me. I wasn't just rebuilding my life, I was rebuilding us. The contest wasn't just about money. It was about proving I could carry my weight, that I could be more than the guy who'd lost everything. But the pressure was crushing. I stopped sleeping, my dreams filled with flames and Javi's face fading into smoke. One morning I hit a wall. My sketches weren't good enough, too messy, too chaotic. I shoved the sketchbook across the table, pencil scattering. Javi found me like that, head in my hands, the weight of failure pressing down. "Talk to me," he said, kneeling beside me. His voice was soft but firm, the kind of tone that could pull me back from the edge. "I can't do this," I admitted. "I'm not enough for the contest, for you, for any of this." He took my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing my cheeks. "You're enough for me, Marcus. You always have been." His words broke something open in me, and I kissed him, desperate and raw, like he was the only thing tethering me to the world. But even his touch couldn't silence the voice in my head whispering that I was dragging him down. The next day, I forced myself back to the sketchbook. I started over, this time drawing Javi, not just his face but his spirit. The way he laughed, the way he stood tall even when he was exhausted, the way he loved me despite everything. The piece began to take shape. Two hands clasped against a backdrop of fire and water, symbolizing destruction and renewal. It was bold, emotional, and terrifyingly honest. I titled it Survive Together. With the deadline looming, I submitted the piece, my heart pounding as I handed it over at the Westcott Gallery. The curator, a woman named Lila with kind eyes and a sharp bob, studied it for a long moment. "This is powerful," she said. "It feels lived." I nodded, unable to speak, and left before I could second-guess myself. Back at Javi's, life kept moving. He got a call from Elena. His mom's condition was worsening, and the hospital bills were piling up. I saw the defeat in his shoulders, the way he tried to hide it behind a smile. "We'll figure it out," he said, but I could hear the strain in his voice. I wanted to scream that I'd fix it, that the contest would change everything, but I didn't know if I believed it. Then came the call that shook me. It was Lila from the gallery. "Marcus, your piece made the shortlist," she said. "We're displaying it at the exhibition this weekend. Bring someone special." My hands shook as I hung up. I told Javi, expecting him to grin, to pull me into one of his bear hugs. Instead, he looked distant. "That's amazing, Marcus," he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "What's wrong?" I asked, my stomach twisting. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not you. It's everything. I got a letter from my landlord today. Rent's going up next month. And Mommy," he trailed off, his voice thick, "I might have to go back to San Juan." The words hit like a freight train. "Go back," I repeated, my voice barely audible. "For how long?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe for good." The room spun. Javi, leaving? The man who'd been my anchor, my reason to keep going? I couldn't lose him, not after everything else. But he wasn't mine to keep, not if his family needed him more. I wanted to beg him to stay, to tell him I'd find a way to make it work, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I nodded, my chest tight, and said, "Whatever you need, Javi. I'm here." But I wasn't sure I could be. Not without him. The night of the exhibition arrived. A glittering event in a repurposed warehouse filled with art and champagne. I wore Javi's borrowed blazer, too big in the shoulders, and he looked sharp in a button-down, his hair tamed for once. My piece hung on a white wall, lit dramatically, and I couldn't stop staring at it. It was us. Our love, our struggle, laid bare for the world. People milled around, murmuring about the art. Lila found us, her eyes bright. "Marcus, you've got a real shot at the prize," she whispered. "The judges are impressed." I forced a smile, but my mind was on Javi, who stood a little too far away, his gaze fixed on the floor. As the night wore on, I felt the distance between us growing. He was slipping away, and I didn't know how to hold on. When the judges announced the winners, I barely heard them call my name. First place, Marcus Tate, Survive Together. The words echoed through the gallery, followed by polite applause. I stood frozen, Javi's hand brushing mine, but my mind was a storm. I'd won $5,000, a solo exhibition, a chance to start over. But Javi's words from earlier, about leaving for San Juan, drowned out the victory. What was the point of winning if I was losing him? Lila rushed over, her smile wide. Marcus, this is huge. The judges loved the emotion in your work. You've got a bright future. I mumbled a thank you, my eyes on Javi. He was smiling, proud, but there was a shadow in his expression, a quiet resignation I hadn't seen before. We stepped outside for air, the cool night biting at my skin. The Syracuse skyline glittered across the lake, but it felt distant, like it belonged to someone else's life. I'm proud of you, Javi said, his voice soft. You did this. You built something out of nothing. Then why does it feel like I'm still losing? I asked, my voice breaking. You're talking about leaving, Javi. How am I supposed to do this without you? He looked away, his jaw tight. I don't want to go, Marcus. But Mommy's getting worse, and Elena can't handle it alone. I'm all they've got. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was all I had, but that wasn't fair. Javi had carried me through the fire, through the weeks of doubt and despair. He'd given me everything. His home, his heart, his strength. I couldn't ask him to choose me over his family. But the thought of him boarding a plane, of waking up without his warmth beside me, made my chest ache like it was caving in. I'll come with you, I said suddenly, the words spilling out before I could stop them. To San Juan. We'll figure it out together. He shook his head, his eyes glistening. You just won, Marcus. This is your moment. You can't throw it away for me. It's not throwing it away if it's for us, I countered, stepping closer. You're not just my boyfriend, Javi. You're the reason I didn't give up. The reason I'm still here. He didn't answer, just pulled me into a hug, his breath shaky against my neck. For a moment, we were just two guys holding on, the world fading away. But the question hung between us. Could love survive distance, duty, and the weight of everything we couldn't control? The next week was a whirlwind. The prize money hit my account, and I paid off Javi's back rent, ignoring his protests. It's not charity, I told him. It's us taking care of each other. He didn't argue, but I saw the pride in his eyes, the way he hated needing help. I knew that feeling too well. I started planning for the solo exhibition, sketching new pieces inspired by our story, love, loss, and the fight to hold on. But every stroke of my pencil felt like a countdown. Javi was making calls to San Juan, arranging a trip to see his mom. He hadn't said for good again, but the possibility hung over us like a storm cloud. One night, I found him on the fire escape, staring at the city lights. I used to think I could fix everything, he said, his voice low. Mommy's health, Elena's stress, our money problems. But I can't. And now, with you, I don't know how to be enough. You are enough, I said, sitting beside him. You've always been enough. But even as I said it, I felt the truth. Love wasn't always enough to fix the world. Sometimes, it just kept you going while it broke your heart. The exhibition was set for a month later, and I threw myself into it, hoping work could drown out the fear. But then Javi got another call. His mom had taken a turn, pneumonia, the doctor said. He booked a flight for the next week. I'll be back, he promised, but his eyes didn't meet mine. The night before he left, we lay on his mattress, the city humming outside. If you stay in San Juan, I said, my voice barely a whisper, what happens to us? He turned to me, his hand tracing my jaw. We fight for it. Long distance, visits, whatever it takes. I'm not letting you go, Marcus. I wanted to believe him, but fear clawed at me. I kissed him, slow and desperate, memorizing the taste of him, the way his breath hitched. We made love that night, not with the urgency of our early days, but with the weight of knowing it might be the last time for a while. The morning he left, I drove him to the airport. The silence in the car was heavy, broken only by the radio's low hum. At the terminal, he hugged me, his arms tight like he was afraid to let go. "I love you," he said, his voice raw. "No matter what." "I love you too," I whispered. And then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. I stood there, alone, the weight of his absence crushing. The exhibition was coming, my career was taking off, but none of it mattered without him. I went back to the empty apartment, his scent still lingering on the sheets. My sketchbook sat on the table, open to a half-finished drawing of us. I picked up a pencil, my hand shaking, and started to draw. Not for the contest, not for the gallery, but for me, for us. Javi's absence was a wound that wouldn't close. His studio felt like a museum of us. His poetry books stacked on the shelf, the chipped mug he loved, the faint scent of his cologne. I moved through the days on autopilot, sketching for the exhibition, but every line I drew felt hollow without him. We texted, called, even video chatted when his signal in San Juan was strong enough, but it wasn't the same. His voice through a screen couldn't replace the warmth of his hand in mine. His mom was stable but not better. "It's touch and go," he told me one night, his face pixelated on my phone. "I might need to stay longer." I nodded, swallowing the ache in my throat. I wanted to be strong for him, to tell him I'd wait forever, but the distance was carving out pieces of me. The exhibition loomed, and I poured my pain into my art. My new pieces were bolder, darker. Scenes of fire and water, hands reaching through chaos, faces half hidden in shadow. Lila, the curator, called them haunting and raw. She didn't know they were my way of screaming into the void, of trying to hold on to Javi across thousands of miles. One night, I got a call from Elena. "Javi's not okay," she said, her voice tight. "He's trying to hide it, but he's breaking, Marcus. He needs you." My heart stopped. I'd been so caught up in my own fear of losing him, I hadn't seen how much he was carrying. His mom, his family, the guilt of leaving me. "I'm coming," I said, the decision made before I could overthink it. I booked a flight to San Juan with the last of the prize money, telling Lila I'd be back for the exhibition. She protested, but I didn't care. Art could wait, Javi couldn't. San Juan was a shock of color and heat, so different from Syracuse's gray chill. I found Javi at the hospital, sitting in a hallway with his head in his hands. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed, and for a moment he just stared, like he couldn't believe I was real. "Marcus?" he whispered, then stood, pulling me into a hug that felt like coming home. "I'm here," I said, my voice muffled against his shoulder. "I'm not letting you do this alone." He took me to his mom's room, where she lay frail but smiling, her eyes bright like his. "So you're the artist," she said, her voice weak but warm. "Javi talks about you like you hung the stars." I blushed, squeezing Javi's hand. For the first time in weeks, I felt whole. We spent days in San Juan, navigating hospital visits and family dinners with Elena and her kids. Javi's world was vibrant, chaotic, full of love and struggle. I saw where his strength came from, the roots that kept him grounded. But I also saw the toll it took. Late nights at the hospital, arguments with insurance companies, the constant fear of losing his mom. One evening, we walked to the beach, the waves crashing under a sky streaked with pink. "I didn't want you to see me like this," Javi admitted, kicking at the sand. "Falling apart." "You're not falling apart," I said, stopping to face him. "You're holding it together. For your mom, for Elena, for me." Let me hold some of it for you. He kissed me then, under the fading light, the ocean roaring beside us. It was a kiss that said everything. Fear, love, hope, pain. I don't deserve you, he murmured against my lips. You deserve everything, I said, meaning it. I flew back to Syracuse alone, promising Javi I'd return. The exhibition was in 3 days and I had work to finish. But being back in his apartment without him felt wrong, like wearing someone else's skin. I threw myself into the final pieces, each one a love letter to him, to us. The night of the exhibition, the gallery was packed. My art covered the walls, a story of survival told in charcoal and ink. Lila introduced me, and I stood in front of strangers, my voice shaking as I talked about survive together. This isn't just my story, I said. It's ours. Mine and the man who reminded me that love is what keeps us going, even when everything else is gone. The crowd applauded, but I was scanning my phone, hoping for a text from Javi. He'd promised to watch the live stream, but San Juan's spotty internet made it uncertain. Then, as I stepped off the stage, my phone buzzed. A video call. Javi's face filled the screen, his grin wide. You killed it, mi amor, he said. I'm so proud. Tears stung my eyes. You're watching. Wouldn't miss it, he said. I love you. The call cut out, but his words stayed with me, carrying me through the night. The exhibition was a success. 2 pieces sold, inquiries about commissions, but none of it mattered as much as knowing Javi was still with me, even from so far away. The weeks after the exhibition were a blur of opportunity and longing. Commissions poured in, galleries called, and Lila hinted at a New York City showcase. For the first time, I saw a future where I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. But every step forward felt incomplete without Javi. He stayed in San Juan, splitting his time between his mom's bedside and odd jobs to cover her bills. We talked every day, but the distance was a constant ache. I sent him sketches, little pieces of my heart mailed across the ocean, and he sent back poems, each one a reminder of why I loved him. But phone calls couldn't replace his laugh in the morning, his hand in mine at night. One night he called me, his voice different, lighter, almost hopeful. Mommy's doing better, he said. The doctors say she might pull through. Relief flooded me, but then he hesitated. But I don't know when I can come back, Marcus, or if I should. The words cut deeper than I expected. What do you mean, if? I asked, my heart racing. This is my home too, he said. My family needs me, but you're building something big. I don't want to hold you back. You're not holding me back, I said, my voice fierce. You're the reason I'm building anything at all. He went quiet, and I could hear the ocean in the background, the same waves we'd stood beside weeks ago. I love you, he said finally, but I need time to figure this out. Time. It was the one thing I didn't want to give, but I had no choice. I hung up, my chest tight, and stared at the sketch I'd been working on. A portrait of us, laughing under a Syracuse sky. I didn't know if it was a memory or a dream. Months passed. I took on more commissions, saved every penny, and flew to San Juan whenever I could. Each visit was a lifeline. Javi's arms around me, his mom's cooking, the chaos of his family that felt like home. But every goodbye at the airport was harder, the uncertainty heavier. One spring day, I got a call from Lila. A gallery in Brooklyn wanted my work for a group show. This is your shot, Marcus, she said. You could move to New York, start fresh. I thanked her, but my mind was on Javi. Could I leave Syracuse, the city where we'd found each other? Could I ask him to leave his family for me? I flew to San Juan that weekend, determined to talk it out. I found Javi at the beach, the same one where we'd kissed under the sunset. He looked tired but happy, his mom's recovery a weight off his shoulders. "You're glowing," he teased, pulling me close. "Big city artist now, huh?" "I don't want it without you," I said, my voice steady. "I've been offered a show in Brooklyn. Come with me, Javi. We'll start over together." His smile faded, and he looked out at the waves. "I want to," he said, "but Mommy's still fragile. Elena's got her own life. I can't just leave." "Then I'll stay here," I said, the words surprising even me. "I'll make it work. Art's portable, right?" He laughed, but it was sad. "You're meant for bigger things, Marcus. I saw it at your exhibition. You're not just surviving anymore, you're shining." "So are you," I said, grabbing his hand. "You're the reason I'm shining. Don't you get that?" He kissed me, slow and deep, and for a moment, I thought we'd found the answer. But life doesn't work like that. We spent the weekend talking, crying, laughing, trying to map out a future that fit us both. By the time I boarded my flight back, we'd made a plan. I'd take the Brooklyn show, build my career, and he'd stay in San Juan until his mom was stronger. We'd visit, call, fight for every moment together. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. A year later, I stood in a Brooklyn gallery, my art on the walls, critics murmuring praise. Javi was there, his first trip back to the States since his mom's recovery. He looked different, stronger, like he'd found his footing again. We stood in front of Survive together, the piece that started it all, and he slipped his hand into mine. "We made it," he whispered. "Not yet," I said, smiling, "but we will." The fire took everything, but it gave me something, too, a clarity I'd never had before. Javi wasn't just my lover. He was the reason I survived, the reason I fought, the reason I believed in love that could weather any storm. And as we stood there, hand in hand, I knew we'd keep fighting, no matter what came next.